Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Hello. Oh my God, they work. This is crazy.
Firstly, like a huge congratulations on this new season. Amrit, I wanted to start with a question for you in terms of Bella, because I love that when you first got this role that you really dove into the comedic side of her and kind of really understanding the science of a joke and, you know, learning stand-up and doing sets yourself. And I was curious in kind of how that comedic sensibility of playing a character who's really trying to be funny all the time has evolved over these 3 seasons, because it's something that Bella's also been learning as she goes. And so her comedic sensibility as a character has changed as well.
That's a beautiful question. Thank you. I love that question. So I'm really grateful for Bella because I discovered I love comedy, and I wouldn't have discovered that. So it could progress faster. I'm not I'm not the best at failing and bombing on stage, but the bombing has been less. But I did just build a theater, and in the back of the theater we have a comedy salon, and that's been inspired by my love for Bella. So that's a big part of it. So it's transformed into building a theater with a comedy stage. Yeah.
I love that. And Pauline, you know, I love how you kind of describe that there's this beautiful naivety to Kimberly. And I think it's one of her really lovely attributes in the way that she sees the world. But it's also interesting to see how she's shedding that bit by bit each season. And so going into this season, I was curious kind of where you found that side of her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a big jump for Kimberly at the beginning of the season where she really made a huge mistake. I think the show really focuses a lot on the friendship between...
Yeah, that's right.
She makes mistakes.
And I think we jump into the season, and then, like, she's forced to reckon with this mistake, and immediately through that, it's kind of a growth spurt. So we see her throughout the season kind of ground herself a little bit more. And I think that it's actually in having made such a big mistake and having had to reckon with it and figure out how to fix it, that then she, in other walks of life, is able to ground herself too.
And Alyah, with Whitney in a lot of season 2, we kind of saw her on this journey of really trying to figure out what is my sense of self and my sense of identity outside of the soccer field. You know, and she's kind of expanding into so many endeavors now, and it's becoming this really broad exploration, which I think is really lovely to see on screen. And I was interested in how you took everything that you built in season 2 into that journey for this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great trajectory to watch someone have who your entire identity is crafted around, like, you do sport well, and then you go to college and half of the year you're like, oh, it's not happening anymore. Who am I without this thing? And so to watch her in real time fill her time with other things that actually bring her joy. And then in this season, you'll sort of see her get overwhelmed by the amount that she wants to do and want to stretch herself. And so I love that she has this breadth of things she likes and is good at and wants to explore, but also at what point does it become too much? And so she's dealing with that this time around.
And Mia, one of the things that kind of struck me so quick with Taylor is she does have this acerbic side to her, and she can be a little bit prickly towards people, but it's always coming from somewhere. And I've heard that that's something that you and Justin Noble, who's the co-creator of the show, really talked about a lot in terms of, you know, when she's got these defense mechanisms up, it always stems from something in her past and who she is. And I was just curious how you really use that to build a lot of this character.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's with everybody, there's backstory to everyone, and there's context to why people are the way they are and the choices that they make. And I think Taylor's a great example of that, of her abrasiveness and her actually just coming across as quite a bit of a bitch half the time. Playing her, I'm like, why are you doing that? I don't understand that, especially me as a person. We go through life very differently, and I'm like, why are you so defensive towards everyone? Like, what's going on? And so I think coming to understand her backstory and the things that she's gone through, whilst it doesn't like eradicate her behavior, it makes you understand more so. And I'm grateful that throughout her trajectory in the story, you understand that, and that slowly starts to melt away. And I think, yeah, she's growing. She's like every other person in this world. She's learning, and I'm happy that that happens for her.
And Gracie, in playing Casey, it's interesting because we meet her and she's, this really girly girl who celebrates all of her femininity and really loves that side of girlhood. And I know that was something that the writers were very specific about wanting to include in bringing in this new character. But again, it really goes back to a lot of her upbringing and her relationship with her mom and who her parents are and the people that she would have been friends with and having been in the pageant world. And so how did you really use her backstory to make that not just feel like a surface level thing, but to make it feel so rooted in the way that you do?
Oh, thanks. Okay, compliment, I'll take it. Well, I would say that I think that when anyone comes to college, it's sort of a fish out of water story because you're inherently coming from a place that is not college. But I think especially for Casey, she's coming from the pageant world and a group of friends that is so different than these women. So I think that she comes in with a lot of outer confidence that is probably going to be challenged. And I think she secretly has a lot of these insecurities because of the world that she comes from. But I would also say that, like, what I love about playing a sort of girly girl character is I think a lot of girly girl qualities get sort of qualified as like frivolous, and I don't agree with that. And I think the show really celebrates a girl like this.
No, I love that answer. Amrit, Pauline, and Alyah, I did want to ask you about filming the farewell scene with Renee, with Leighton leaving this season, because I think what's so beautiful about watching the moment where they've all found out that she's leaving and that conversation that you all have is the way that the emotions are so real, because this is a friendship that you've built over the course of making this show together over the last few years as well. And so what was that experience in really just channeling your own emotions into a moment like that in the show?
It was the worst day of my life. No, I mean, yeah, well, you get to see us do it, like, in real time on the show. Even, like, the way that the dialogue is written and the way that she's emoting in the scene, it was impossible to stand across from her and not feel how hard it was for her to do, too. But at the same time, they'd call cut, and we'd be like, so what are we eating for dinner? Like, I don't know. It sort of had this bittersweet balance of both, of life happening in that moment and being so heavy, and then also being like, there will be a tomorrow, and the show will continue, and Gracie and Mia will come, and there'll be a new world, which is beautiful and sad, but like, I don't know, it was great.
Yeah, very emblematic of what was being lived in real life and then paralleled with what was going on in the show.
Yeah, there was no acting. It was just
Just tears.
like, thanks, guys. We don't need to do therapy anymore,
And for both of you, Gracie and Mia, in coming into this show, you've both kind of really stepped into the tone and the voice of the show so seamlessly and really understanding that sensibility.
Thank you.
Stop it.
But I was curious for both of you in how having this entire world already built and kind of being able to look at that mix of drama and comedy that's so heartfelt really helped you in figuring out who these characters were going to be within that space.
Well, I had watched the show. I was a big fan of the show. So it was sort of terrifying because I walked into my TV. I got on set and I was like, wait, I know this cafeteria, but I was like, but there's not a real door there. I was like, television, okay. So that was scary, but I think it also, I was just a fan of it. So I was so familiar with how it worked already that I feel like, I don't know if that helped my audition. I would hope that it did, but I think I just felt like I understood the rhythm of the show and wanted to be a part of that and already really loved it.
I unfortunately couldn't watch the show. They hate the British, apparently.
Are you British?
Yeah, what gave it away? No. Is it obvious? Crazy. It's all an act. But I'd watched the show. I'd been as in like clips online. I'd been very aware of it and knew that I would love it if I could watch it. So then when I got the audition and I got the character, it was like an innate feeling that I actually just knew this person, rather than maybe focusing on the tone of the show. It's just like, right, this is who she is and this is my take. And luckily that was also felt by Justin and Mindy. I think for me coming into it, it was more so making sure I didn't drown under the pressure of oh my God, this is my dream coming true, because this is my first big job, my first character. And the fact that it's with these gorgeous women on this amazing show and with HBO, and I walked into the Warner Bros. Studios every day and like, okay, this is my life and this is my work. What? So it was just very much that, but it was so beautiful to come in and not feel that pressure at all, especially like with these gorgeous women. Like I walked in and on my first day on set, I remember I was sat on the Sprinter van going from the trailers to set and being like, okay, I've got like my little script, it's my first scene, and all I hear is this like immense noise coming, and you three just like impounded into this van.
Oh, no.
I know, it was scary. And instantly it was just like everyone laughing, talking instant like advice, and I was like, okay, no, these girls have me. Like, they're my friends already. It was so nice. Thanks, guys.
It's so great. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Mia, your eyes look beautiful with the.
Hey,
Look at that. It's like.
Ooh.
Now that is called color complementing.
Oh, honey.
Beautiful.
I'll look into them more often.
Amrit, one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about with Bella this season is just kind of the way that you've approached her a little bit differently and the choices that she's made, because obviously we saw her go through this whole trajectory in season 2 of not always making the best choices, and at the end of season 2 saying that she wanted to transfer, and once she realizes that's not a possibility, feels like she really takes a lot of accountability and really tries to figure out, how can I make different choices, you know, even the friendship burgeoning with Taylor, where it's like, how can I help someone else to not make some of the mistakes that I've made along the way? And so how did that really shift a lot of elements in terms of motivation and choice for you this season?
I just know, I was an asshole when I was 19. Not much has changed. But
That's not true.
any assholes out here? Loosen them up. Wow, I feel like doing a stand-up set. I don't know
She's doing stand-up,
why.
everyone. She's trying some things out. Bear with us.
It's coming.
I just want to say that
I'm gonna answer the question.
I have small feet, and
All
it
right.
has nothing to do with the size of my pussy.
We've lost the plot. The question was,
What was the question?
Essentially how you kind of found yourself with the character making a lot of different choices, given that she's trying to take more accountability for her actions in a way that we haven't seen before.
I think when you're 19 and an asshole, as we identified, and I know when I was 19, I would make mistakes, but I wasn't conscious of my bad behavior. So I would be very reckless and just do Band-Aid things to be a good person, but wasn't conscious about that. So she knows she wants to help Taylor, and she should be a faff, and she should do these good book things. But she doesn't actually really want to help anyone. She's still, she hasn't changed. It's not possible for anyone to change just like that. But I think with the course of actually doing the deed, wax on, wax off, of actually being in a place of service, she learns that she does care, and that is her bones. And usually when we do behave so recklessly, it's because of trauma or childhood, and I think especially in Bella's case, she wasn't allowed to do what she wanted to do. So she just wanted to transgress, which I don't know about a lot of you guys, but I was a kid who didn't go out very often, so I resonated with that. But I think with the journey, she actually learns consciousness because she does feel what it feels like to be a better person. Yeah.
I love that. And Pauline, as well, for you with Kimberly, she has such a specific idea of where she sees her future going. You know, she has this idea of, I want to be a justice on the Supreme Court, and that is my goal. And she, at the beginning of the show, wasn't always very adaptable to obstacles and roadblocks in her way, but it feels like season by season, again, she's really kind of growing and learning how to move through obstacles differently. And so how did you find that change in season 3 for her?
I think you kind of answered it yourself. I think with each season, the way it kind of reflects your time in college. So as time goes on, you get used to the place where you are. You start to find your friends or the people you want to hang out with. You figure out what it is to have roommates, and you also oftentimes figure out what it is you want to study. And when you figure out what it is you want to study, I think mentors are really important. And Kimberly in this season finds a mentor. And what I really liked about the storyline that develops with Tig Notaro is you really get to see Kimberly have someone help her through the obstacles that she faces and helps her navigate the tough waters that we often face when we're in school and even outside of school. So something I'm very excited about the journey for Kimberly, on this journey for Kimberly this season is the relationship to a professor that she has and how that develops.
It's such a great storyline. And Alyah, in terms of Whitney as well, we kind of really get to see her grappling with what happens when I've taken on too much and it no longer feels manageable, because she's someone who really shoulders a lot and struggles to ask for help at times. And that almost makes people ask more of her, oh, you don't mind if we move you to a different position on the soccer field because you're always agreeable and you always say yes to everything. And so what was that experience for you in really finding how she was going to navigate this aspect of anxiety and things that have been bubbling under the surface the whole time, but finally get to start cracking through?
Yeah, I feel like since the show began, Whitney's just been going through it, like on a different level. Season 1, she was like, I like a married man. That's fine. I won't deal with those feelings and just go and go and go. And so now I feel like she's at a place where she's pushed herself so much that she has to reckon with, she has to sit with why she is unable to keep going. And she's having her breaking point moment. And then there's that added aspect of like racially, she hasn't really processed, you grow up one way and you're seeing a representation of who you are from your parents, your environment, and then you go to school and it's not conscious, right? Like that you're navigating these waters in a different way than your peers until it's like in front of your face in a way that you can't ignore. And so she's also having to reckon with that. Like, I am having a different experience here, and I have no idea how to process this on top of all the other things. So it all just comes to a head, and I honestly relate to that so much. Like, I feel like that was me in college, too, just being like, I can go the same way you girls can. And I was like, what's different here? It's like, you're black, baby. That's just genuinely it. And so I have so much empathy for her, and I love that we get to see this nuanced take on a young black girl who just doesn't have the consciousness and awareness, and she's actively developing it and becoming proud of it, but isn't initially that aware of it. And so all of those things are coming to play this season and will play out for the rest of the season too, which I'm excited about.
I love that. And Gracie, in our introduction to Casey, she comes into this school having transferred specifically for her boyfriend that she's been together with for years.
Such a good idea.
Such a great idea. It goes so well for her.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to kind of watch her grapple with what happens when that goes away. And I have to figure out my own sense of identity, because even when we first meet her in those early scenes, the way that she talks isn't about her as an I or a me, it's we, even when he's not in the room with her. And so how did you set about exploring this new journey of who am I going to be in the world if I don't have that anymore?
I mean, I give all the credit to the writing, because I think that was such a smart beginning to her story, just such a failure from the get-go. And I think when I see this in a lot of young women, and I've probably been guilty of this myself, of identifying myself as someone's girlfriend and before seeing myself in moments. And I think for her, that's her entire world. Even the things that she might be interested in are not really developed yet. And I think that creates some very good sad comedy, but a lot of opportunity for someone to change a lot over the season. So I don't want to, spoiler alert, she's gonna change. There's gonna be growth. Yeah, so yeah.
Me and Amrit, I wanted to ask the two of you about filming the scene together where Taylor is in hospital and Bella's come to see her, because I think it's such beautiful performances from both of you. And it's really both of them kind of shedding everything and being so vulnerable in that moment. And I think especially for Taylor, it's such a great shift to suddenly see that in her. And that's the place where we as an audience start to understand where a lot of those things have come from earlier. And so I was just interested in how you both stepped into that together.
For sure. I think with Taylor, that was such an important moment that had to be had, because I think leading up to that, and I'm guilty of this as well, not necessarily being conscious of my feelings and my behavior and things getting bottled up and not expressing my emotions or how I truly am feeling. And also, like, she's moved to the other side of the world. She's moved to a different continent. She doesn't know anybody and gets off on the wrong foot with everyone. That is, regardless of whether who you are or how you view yourself, is difficult, especially when you have her tendencies. And I think that's a very natural way for people to just kind of let everything out, is to completely fall from grace, fall from your high horse. And so I think it was great that Taylor had that, because it's like, no, okay, babe, you can talk to other people, you can be vulnerable, you can open up. And I think it was amazing to have Amrit there, because, I mean, she's phenomenal. And I think I learned so much from her throughout this process of what it means in a scene to be aware of yourself and your character and what they're going through. And I think within that space, she and the crew and everybody in the writing facilitated a really safe space to be able to be vulnerable and to have somebody across from you who cares about you in real life, but also your character and the journey that she's on. It was beautiful. It was easy. So thank you for that. Yes.
Thanks, Mia.
You're welcome.
And Mia, also, I just want to say, like, your eyes look so beautiful right now.
Yeah, just sitting over here. Color theory? I don't know. It's just coming to me.
Let's have a talk back about Mia's eyes.
God, I'm going to keep you all. Thank you.
For me, it just, it was serendipitous. Love, really wanted to slip that word in. Makes me feel smart. Doing what was in service to Mia was what was best for Bella. And I know it was an important, pivotal scene in your storyline. And so a lot of it was, what do you need? What can I do? And also there's this idea, I know I have, that I'm angry because I have alcoholism in my family. I don't know about you. We've actually never spoken about that. But I have this idea of being angry when I have to take care of someone. But mostly I'm scared, and I go into nurse. And so that idea was broken, because that's how I felt for you anyways, because I wanted to make sure you felt safe and whatnot. But I think that's more the truth of those situations. Do you have anything? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Honestly, like that, what you've just said is so powerful and interesting, because that was a take that we did, and I remember, I think I was like looking at my hands, and I looked up and you were crying, and I didn't realize in that moment, I was like, oh my God, Taylor needs that. She needs like a mirror image of, no, you can break down right now. And that's exactly then what happened. And then I just started crying. And it was, as an actor, really powerful, because I've never had that before, where somebody's been so invested, I think, in my scene, in a way of like, or my emotion. And then also for Taylor to be like, oh no, Bella does care as much as whatever's been going on. And wherever their relationship is, she actually is a good person, despite what, she's done in the past, because two things can be true.
And Pauline and Alyah, we started this season with your characters on the outs, having had the fallout over Kanan. And I'm so glad that they are back together. But I was just interested in the experience of filming scenes which are so opposing to the way that you've always filmed scenes together, because there's always been so much closeness between the two of you. And also for you, Alyah, what you felt that Whitney really needed in order to be able to finally make that forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're the same question. We started filming the scene. It took us so long to film this scene, because I think there was so much buildup on both sides, and I knew I needed to feel a certain thing that I couldn't name until I got in the moment with you. And it was less needing to hear about how what you and Kanan were, and more needing to hear about what I was to you, and that, like, as a friend, I mattered more than that moment, and I needed you to say those words. And it took us a second to find that in the moment, because I think we both were trying to navigate our own characters' internal things. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a very interesting moment. Like, for the 3 seasons that we had filmed, I know that I had never had a scene that took that long, because like there was something that wasn't working. And Justin, our showrunner, was very understanding, and honestly took the time to rewrite the scene with us, because the way it was originally scripted really put the emphasis on Kanan. And when Alyah started saying there's something that doesn't work here.
Yeah, like I'm not hearing the thing I need to hear to forgive you. I wouldn't forgive you if you said that to me.
Exactly.
Like I'm trying to say it's okay, but she hasn't said the thing that makes me want to say it.
We were like getting to the end of the scene where it's like, and we make up, and it's like, we both were like, what? Like, I'm saying like, this is what I did with Kanan, but we can be friends? And she's supposed to be like, yeah, you know. And it really led to us having to have this conversation on what is it that Whitney needs to hear? And what is Kimberly prepared to say? So it was a very interesting just moment on like I said, on 3 seasons of filming, kind of the first time where there was this like a mini writer's room with 2 actors and the showrunner being like, we actually have to rewrite this beat for beat. And I think we got there.
Yeah, definitely.
Gracie, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was, I think it's in episode 4 that we get to see you sing on the show for the first time.
Woo!
And obviously... For those of you who don't know, Gracie is also a singer in her band Lawrence, and obviously...
Yeah,
If you don't know.
But what I think is so interesting about getting to see you sing on the show is that you're obviously singing as your character, and you know she's accused of not necessarily having the emotion and the feeling behind it, which is obviously something that you know how to do in terms of emoting. And so what was that approach for you in terms of kind of stripping back your talent and skills to find what it would look like for her in that moment?
I was trying to sing as well as I could. I hope that comes across. But I think I was trying to hold back a little bit of, the emotion, because I think that she's a girl who hasn't really been in theater. Like, she's new to the theater world, and is also a person that approaches everything thinking that she's an expert on it. And so I think that when she comes into, I don't know what I can say, but like audition, she's, even the way she's dressed, her song choice, a lot of the choices she makes are not necessarily correct for the theater world. But I think that she's kind of just doing her and expecting it to be like, everyone loves this, right? And so I think that there's partially that. I think that also I talked to Justin about this a lot. I think a lot of it was that we wanted to feel like the theater professor who just hates her. It's not necessarily founded, but that there's just a real animosity between these 2 very different people. A theater professor who takes the art of it so seriously, and a girl who really values pageantry and looking cute while she's doing things, and that's not what necessarily this theater professor values. So I was trying to smush all that together while still trying to sing as well as I could. And I hope
And she sings live. Every single take she sang live on set, which is just crazy.
Woohoo!
By the way.
Thanks.
Insane.
Thank you. Yeah.
Amrit, one of the other things that I really enjoyed with Bella this season is getting to see her be so vulnerable romantically. You know, she kind of came blazing in season 1 with a lot of confidence, but she has a crush on someone that she kind of really sees as a potential long-term prospect before she finds out that he has a girlfriend. And so it almost feels like she's very flustered in a way that she often isn't easily. And how was that romantic interest in playing that storyline a little bit different for you?
I will answer that, but I just wanted to give it up to Gracie a little more, that when she would sing on stage, even the last scene, I don't know if you remember, but it was like an actual show. Like, everybody felt so honored to be there. And also that you sing not like, oh, I know this is just my, it's not my close-up. You give it every time, which is so endearing and so generous.
Sorry, I'm talking not into the mic. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That is so, Thank you. That's so
Freaky,
kind.
girl. No one should be able to do that.
Thank you.
It's scary. You're insane.
Really kind. Thank
Yes, yeah. So we got a free show very often on set.
Whether they wanted it or not.
But for Bella, I think she, again, is trying to be a good person. So she goes to this, maybe I have to be a good Indian girl and commit. see if that's if she likes that or not. What do you guys think? But she does try for sure, and she does fall for someone who I actually fell for. I think he's the boy crush of everybody here. He's an incredible person, Nabil, and you guys will see him. He's a fantastic guy.
And Alyah, with Whitney, we've obviously seen so much about her relationship with her mom and really striving to have that identity outside of that. But this season, we also kind of get to see the way that she really wishes that she could be more like her dad. And her dad's a musician and much more loose in terms of his personality, where her mom is from a much more structured world and personality type. And I was just interested in kind of how you found her perspective of her dad and her relationship with her dad really adding a lot of layers.
It was so cool to do because I feel like everyone's parents showed back up, and then obviously we had Casey and Mia's who were new, but then I was sitting next to someone who I was meeting on set, and so I got to find it with him while we were sitting there. And then there's also that storyline with Whitney because her parents are divorced where her mom thinks she idolizes her dad too much, and she's sort of questioning, is this person showing up for me, or am I creating a version of them in my head that I'm tied to? And you get to see in real time how he is present, and he is good and kind, and all of the things that she said he was. And that, I think, is really important for her, and just for the image of what it looks like to be a young black girl whose parents are two separate parts of the country and the world, and that she can still have good relationships with both of them, I think is great.
I mean, one of the things I think for all of you that I think the show portrays so authentically is that you're at that age point for these characters of where you start to realize that your parents are real people and you really see them in a different sense, but you also want your parents to see you differently. So it's this two-way street of what that relationship looks like. And when you have an episode like Parents Weekend, because there's another Parents Weekend coming up this season, how does that really allow you to dive into that sort of space and what that looks like?
I didn't listen to the question, I'm so sorry.
Mia was staring into her own eyes.
I mean, I think what it does is that it allows you to really, I like to say that the college years are kind of like purgatory, where you are in this weird limbo, in this waiting space where you feel like you're an adult, and in many ways you are an adult, but oftentimes you're still supported by your parents, or there are rules on the campus where you live that it's like you're free but not totally free. And I think what Parents Weekend does is, and why the episodes tend to work, is they really contextualize where these girls are in their lives, and you really get to live in the awkwardness of these young women who you feel want to sometimes be like, Mom, Dad, and also kind of like, I'm growing out of that, and I'm going to the loo, and I'm we so enjoy filming these episodes with the parents, because first of all we get to work with such veteran comedic actors, and it's just incredible. And there's just it just gets so good, but we also get this. So we get to watch them and how they work, but we also get to be around each other as younger actors than these veteran comedians, and our characters are the children of them, or their children. I feel like my English is not coming out properly.
Just speak French, it's fine.
It really is such a thrill when we get to just film scenes with the parents.
And it's cool too because I remember having this experience in college too, where I'd go to school and I was like, yeah, I'm growing up. And then I'd go home and be like, I can't act like that here. It doesn't work. They don't buy me as an adult. And it's like they're coming into our space. They come onto our campus and we get to sit in a room and decide how much of Whitney that am I going to continue to be here, or am I going to revert? Or, we all kind of agree upon which version of ourselves to be with each other, with our parents, which I remember doing in college. I was like, okay, my mom's coming, be cool. I don't do what I do,
Yeah, it really is. And we get a good little surprise of that with Casey's character too this season. So that's exciting.
how foundational was getting that script for that episode for you? Because I feel like when we meet her mom, we understand so much about who she is.
Yeah, Justin had kind of like previewed the idea of what Casey's mom might be, but actually getting to read it and then work with Missy Pyle, who's like just so funny and so talented, was just really informative. I think so much of Casey's identity is tied up in who her mom is, and even her fashion choices, you know, her hairdo. A lot of it is modeled after her mom, but also a lot of the foundation of like her insecurities. So it was really helpful. And I also, to what Pauline said, like, even though we get to do scenes together, those maybe take half a day, and then the rest of our scenes aren't with each other. And, you know, to do an episode where most of the scenes are with each other, you're basically spending a week and a half just with each other. And that was just so fun. It was like the best time.
What was that experience of filming that first scene with all 5 of you together? Because you kind of all have the individual scopes of your stories and your characters and comedic sensibility, but then you also get to look at what does it look like when we're all in a group setting together and the way that we all bounce off of each other.
A lot of laughing.
Yeah.
So much laughing.
A lot of ruining other people's scenes
Yeah.
because you're just quietly trying not to laugh at Gracie and Missy doing their thing over there. And also on your side of the table, there was so much happening that
much.
I just like couldn't look because I was like, I'm gonna ruin everything. Because I was learning in real time too, like who Eli was, and because Whitney never meets him, so it's like it was crazy.
Yeah.
And on the other side of things in that episode, Mia, for you, I mean, your character really hasn't had a parental presence. And I feel like once we see that in her, we really understand why she pushes people away, because the people that were supposed to show up for her the most are the people that have let her down the most. And it's actually really heartbreaking to realize that, you know, kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, that that's where so much of this behavior and trying to push people away and trying to avoid getting close to people comes from. And so how foundational was that in terms of this character for you?
I mean, I think it was definitely a turning point to this idea that she was being allowed in by these girls and she was literally given a seat at that table. And I think in that episode, she was definitely shocked, but she was like honestly so thrilled to be there. And I also think she hasn't had that family environment. And so I think she found it extremely, regardless of anything that happened, like just she found it so entertaining and was like, oh my God, this is a family. I'm experiencing what family is. This is now my family. And that it was beautiful. And yeah, it was a scene for me where I think it was like I shot some scenes with all of the girls together, but very briefly. And so for me, it was a big learning experience to be like, oh my God, this is how they work. This is who they are. We would like sit there in between takes and be like, tell me everything about yourself. So it was beautiful. Yeah, it was like even me coming into the family. It was lovely.
Alyah, we also get to see a lot of Whitney in terms of having her ideology challenged in a lot of different ways. You know, I'm not going to be interested in this romantic interest because I found out that he's wealthy, or I have certain ideas about my professor on this course. But I love the fact that she's always open to reconsidering things. And if you found
She's often wrong,
Yeah.
is what the reality is. But yes, I love that.
Have you kind of found, as you've gone through this season, that that's something that you've come across against more narratively, and that you've also found her much more open to at least listening to the other side a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can only be so stubborn and be wrong so many times before you're like, humbled. Okay. And she, throughout the course of the season, learns to like ask for help, and that it's okay to not have every answer and to not die on every hill, which is just a good lesson for young people to learn at a certain point, you know. It's like listen to other perspectives and be challenged, ooh, you know. But it is actually hard for her to do, and you watch it happen, which is great.
Pauline and Amrit, I feel like you're both playing characters who live so much on the surface in terms of they will say every single thing that they're thinking at any moment. They'll express every emotion that they're feeling. And so I was just very curious about the experience for both of you and getting to play characters who live so much in an expressive world.
Yes, think about it this time.
Yeah, I actually think, you know, the thing that it made me the most aware of was how, you know, Amrit was saying that she is grateful to be playing Bella because Bella helped her discover that she loves comedy. And I kind of felt very similarly as I started working on the show, where I felt like I started to understand comedy. I started to be able to read scripts and be like, oh, I see where this is funny. I see where the beat is. And basically, I think what Kimberly and Bella share is that a lot of the comedy is in the writing, and it's just about finding the math to how you make it work. And it's tricky at times because you're doing takes over and over again, and you say, okay, I found where the beat is, I found where the turn is, and you have to keep it fresh each time. So I think that it's at times really fun to be able to play characters. Not at times. It's very fun to play a character that is constantly just saying whatever's on their mind. And the thing that I take from that is it's almost mathematical. Yes. Yes, please.
Yes.
Great timing.
Imagine if that was my only contribution.
Yes.
Yes. I agree. I learned that it was a science as well. That's why I said yes. But also, it's a great way as an actor to get in trouble in a way, because you have characters that are spitting, they act so much on impulse, which I often did as an actor, which was sometimes great, but also not great. I had to find a medium of that. But it was really great exercising as an actor. I am going to do a plug-in just because I'm aware of time. I'm doing a theater show at the Grace Moon Arts Theater, and we have a code because I was coming here, 92Y. So doing that for tomorrow and Friday, and some of the best acting I've seen in New York. So come down tomorrow and Friday if you'd like, and 30% discount.
Wouldn't that be funny if that was the code with no relation to this?
Yeah, that's just...
It's always been the code.
It's always been the code.
Gracie, when we kind of first meet Casey as well, she kind of comes in blazing with this sense of confidence, and we kind of get to see that actually it's really a mask for her in a lot of ways. And so how did you set about shaping the idea of what happens when you strip away this pretense? Sometimes it's genuine, but sometimes it's there to really hide a lot of fragility and vulnerability in her.
Well, it was probably the part of the character that I related to the most. I don't feel very similar to this character in a lot of ways, and that made it really fun to play. But I think that the area in which we relate was this idea of someone who really exists on both ends of the spectrum of extremely confident and extremely insecure. And now I'm going to do my own plug, which is that I have a band called Lawrence, and we... And that's it. That's the end of the story. No, we have a song called I'm Confident That I'm Insecure that came out right before I got cast on this show. And then I started getting the scripts, and there are lines that are so directly tied, just totally coincidentally, or maybe I was just giving off such an insecure energy that they kind of wrote to that. But no, it was really so weird that these two parts of my life were kind of discussing the same thing, but for two very different people, one being me actually, and then the other being this character, Casey. So I had so much empathy for that part of her, and for a character who I think can be a little over the top in her own reality. I think that it was the part of it that sort of grounded it for me and made me understand why her shtick was her shtick.
It's also crazy to watch that episode too, because she changes so much. I was watching that, I was like, that is how it started. That's so wild. You really go on a journey. It's very beautiful to watch, and also you did it so well.
Thank you.
And the show also just does such a great job for all of your characters through the writing and through your performances, and really allowing these evolutions and these changes and these growth, which feels so authentic to going through that period of life. And I was curious for each of you, kind of what you're proudest of in terms of what you've seen your character go through and the changes that you've seen them make along the way.
Making friends. No, I don't know. I think her whole evolution is quite remarkable. It's a really pivotal point in her life where she's actually becoming a better person and opening up to people, and it's hard to be vulnerable and honest. And I think that's amazing and definitely brought so much positivity into her life. So I'd probably it's quite an overarching answer, but kind of everything. She's great.
I think by the end of season 3, Bella really learns to stand up for who she is. And because she has so much remorse because of her actions, she tries to change who she is, and she realizes that's not the solution. The solution isn't the problem. And we'll see when you watch the show, you'll understand what that means, maybe.
I think maybe Kimberly goes on a very similar journey of throughout the seasons of trial and error, and makes pretty big mistakes, and then spends a lot of time trying to make them better. And I think by the end of season 3, she's starting to make the right mistakes. She's starting to kind of push the boundaries that I think are important to push when you're in this purgatory time of college and you have the room to make mistakes. So that's something I'm quite proud of for the character this season, is that she continues to be quite very go-getter and is starting to make mistakes, but the right ones.
I think Whitney, I would say I'm proud of her forgiveness, because I wouldn't necessarily be that good at forgiving my friends if I was that young. No, but genuinely, I think she has the capacity to be changed by her environments and by people consciously, not just because it's what's written, but also because she's actively being challenged and changing. And this season, she really has a moment of deep inner work that is wild to watch a young person have, and as far as mental health goes. And I think I'm really proud of the way that she struggles to accept that and then inevitably learns to ask for help. 'Cause that's just a hard thing to do.
I think I'm most proud of probably the scenes that we all have together, or where we really had to rely on each other. I never had this big of a role in anything before, and I think that there are scenes that, this is the episode we just saw is one side of the character for me, as you said, and I think that there's a lot more that I was honestly really nervous about shooting, and I talked to all of you about it, probably too much. Because you all know what I'm talking about. But I was really nervous about a lot of it, and I think that I'm proudest of the moments kind of in between in those scenes where, we'd cut for a second and it was this is a really amazing group of people, genuinely, who, in between takes will be do you need water? How are you feeling? Do you want to run lines? That kind of thing. And I really value that, because I hadn't had this exact experience before, and I didn't know what to expect. So I think any scene that I feel proud of my acting in, I think is largely due to what I was receiving in that moment.
I mean, with this show as a whole, I think the writing is so incredible, but also a huge reason why it really connects to people is just these beautifully layered and textured performances that you all give. So congratulations on another amazing series. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Mara.
Coming out.
So much.
And thank you all. Oh my gosh, it's so late. Go home, go to bed.
Yeah, give it up for 92Y.
Go team.